Creating a primary key on a table is something you will do on 99.9% of the tables that you ever create in your career. So let's take a look at this. Now, the primary key can be created along with the table when you create it, or it can be added later. What I want to show you here is a little demo of how we can create the primary key when we create the table. So I'm going to jump out into the SQL Server Management Studio. I'm assuming at this point you know that to open the Management Studio, you know how to do that. You'll have to connect to the database. You should know how to do that. If you don't, go back and look at some of the earlier videos and you will see exactly how to take care of that. But I'm going to create a new query here, so I'll click on New Query, and I want to create a table. Now I'm going to create a new table, and I'll type Create Table, and I will call it Mark PK for primary key. Then I'll jump down and put my parentheses, and I'll do person ID, and I'll make that an integer data type. Then I'll do the last name column, varchar 50. And notice I'm just going to say primary key clustered. I don't have to put clustered, but we'll worry about that later. Don't let that throw you right now if you don't know what that means. First name, varchar 25. Okay, and then I'll close everything out and put a semicolon. Now, when I execute this should create my table called Mark PK, and if I didn't fat finger anything, I should get command completed successfully, and I did. So I'll come over here and refresh, click my refresh button. I can get it that way. Okay, let me click on my tables, click refresh, there we go. Notice there's Mark PK. Now notice when I expand my columns, last name, because of my command, has a primary key here. Notice it says PK right there. All right. Now, if I go look at constraints right here, I don't see any. If I look at keys, notice there is a key there, but look at the name on it. PK, Mark PK 7449F3982B601D43. What a name for a primary key. Well, let's jump back out here just a minute and talk about that. When I create a primary key, I don't have to name it, and I didn't name it. I just said add a primary key to this column. And if I don't name it, a name gets generated by the system. Well, you just saw the kind of names that Bill has set this up for us, and I'm talking about Bill Gates here, and I'm trying to be a little humorous, okay? I know he's not CEO and actively in charge anymore, but it's still kind of fun. Anyway, it's not a user-friendly name by any stretch. Most T-SQL's developers will provide a user-friendly name when they create that primary key. So let's go out there and take a look at doing that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a table called Mark PK2, and I'll do the first name and last name. I'm going to take this primary key definition off right here, and I am going to add it on the first name. Okay, so at the end of the first name column, I'm going to add constraint, the word constraint, the name I want to give it, PK person, and then I'll use the words primary key. And then I'll tell you what, I will go ahead and make this one a composite primary key. We'll do it on person ID and on the column last name. How about that? Okay. And so I'm going to come over here and do a little housekeeping, pull this back so that we can see it all at once here. Okay. Now I am going to highlight this. Going to pull all this down. Notice I've got a little red squiggly line here. Well, I have an opening parentheses right here, an opening one here, and I've got only one here closed. These open and close themselves, obviously. So I need another. And notice my little red squiggly went away. So little red squiggly lines mean, wait a minute, you can't do this. It's not going to work. So now I'll hit execute. It completed. And if I go up here, click on tables, refresh, expand Mark PK2 because that's the table I created here. Look at my columns and notice now I have a composite primary key or one on both columns. And if I look at my keys here, notice it's now called PK person. That's a much easier name than my little PK key name up here, which is Mark PK 7449F and so forth. Okay. Now let me do this real quickly. Let's go back out to our presentation here and talk about how primary keys can also be created graphically, and I'll do a quick demo and warn you this feels like cheating. I will go to my table called Mark. I'll right click, go into Design, and you'll notice I don't have a primary key. Well, let's add one. I will right click on the column I want and set the primary key. I can right click the column, remove the primary key. If I want to do a composite, I'll left click there, press the Shift button, select two columns, right click, set the primary key. There's my composite. Pretty easy stuff, right? So anyway, there's how to do primary keys in T-SQL code, and I can do them graphically as well, and it's almost too easy doing it graphically.